Hey everyone, you're listening to the Active Turnkey podcast, a podcast designed for hands-off, passive real estate rental investors. In the Active Turnkey podcast, you'll hear Tom Olson and Jared Stoutmeister discuss all things turnkey rentals with other turnkey providers, service providers, and rental investors. Our goal is to help you reach your financial freedom and whatever comes after that. Let's go. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Active Turnkey podcast. I'm Jared Stoutmeister, your host, and I have Tom Olson here, the owner of all the Olson Group and Good Success. And we are here talking about kind of like the second half portion of last week. We talked about financial freedom and what it is. This week we're going to talk about how to get it. How do you get to financial freedom? So Tom, are you ready?
I'm ready, dude. Let's make this happen.
Well, this is usually something that gets Tom pretty excited. Financial freedom.
It is.
This is what we do for investors. It's really exciting and it's fulfilling. And so now we have the opportunity to kind of discuss what is it? Or we talked about last time, what is it? This time is how do we get it? Yeah, how do we get it? So in our experience, we have seen guys who have done their financial plan, and some people buy rentals first and they jump in, they don't have a plan. So if I'm a first-time investor, I've never bought a house before, I'm going to jump in, I want to get into investing. What do I do first? The plan? The house? The deal?
Neither.
You have my interest peaked.
Yes.
Tom. What's next?
The interest is peaked. Yes.
What spot did I leave out?
Neither. So actually, you know, I've actually helped people with their financial freedom, and I've actually sat down and actually created their financial freedom plan with them, and actually sat down in different group meetings and be able to, help them develop that. I think it ought to be about the things that you know. So I think that you shouldn't just go into things that you don't know just because you think it's possible to have financial freedom in. But I think you have to step back. So kind of like last week's episode was about what is financial freedom. Mm-hmm. And I think that is the first step. The first step is to figure out what. And if you actually get my book called the Active Turnkey book here, The Best Way to Buy Rentals, a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is in this book. So if you don't want to listen to this rest of this podcast, just go to atkbook.com and order the book, or go to Amazon and look up Active Turnkey, The Best Way to Buy Rentals, and you will find the book.
Or you could listen and then
yes, you could listen and then do it. So financial freedom, I think, is the very first part. Like thinking about financial freedom and figuring out what financial freedom is for you is the first step. And that's kind of what we talked about last week is what is financial freedom. Mm-hmm. It's basically having enough cash flowing assets or enough passive income to be able to provide for your lifestyle and what you want that to be. Mm-hmm. For me, like the first time I learned about financial freedom, the first time I learned about financial freedom was Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad, when he kind of talked about this whole concept of having all these cash cows or these cash machines sitting out there and enough to be able to pay for your lifestyle or pay for what your purpose is here on life. And that's kind of where you have to go with this whole process. And so like figuring out what is very important. So that's my first chapter here. It's financial freedom. Mm-hmm. And the very first step of that is what is financial freedom. But I can't define that for you. You've got to figure out what that means for you. Mm-hmm. So every one of these steps almost kind of has a process inside of its steps. Mm-hmm. So figuring out what financial freedom is to you, what I would tell you is you've got to go through your yearly budget. Don't create, I believe in the monthly budget. I believe in the weekly budget. That's fine. But I think you can't really figure out what financial freedom is unless you really know all of your expenses throughout the year. So you've got to add up everything that you spend on a yearly basis. So that starts with your weekly basis, your monthly basis, your bi-monthly basis if you have certain bills that come in different times of the year. But really, think about Christmas time. Think about vacations. Think about all those things have to get lumped into this big number. And you've got to figure out what your number is when it comes to financial freedom first. Mm-hmm. Now, why you do financial freedom is different for every person. Right. I get it. I totally understand. For you and me, it's more about purpose-driven and how we can, spend our time, talents, and treasures on other things and why we're here placed on this earth. But for some people, it might just be to retire. That's the purpose. It might just be for other things. But I don't think purpose in this realm comes first. I think purpose ought to come first every day. I think you ought to ask yourself, why am I placed on this earth today? Every day. Purpose is very important, and to kind of live your life on purpose for a purpose is very important. But I think when it comes to financial freedom, you have to start with what. So you start with what it is that you need and what it is that you want. I think some of that can be developed over time of like, maybe I don't need everything I think I want. Maybe like you said last week, maybe I could do it for less now so that in the future, maybe I could have it back. But you got to kind of think about, you have to kind of think through that. So the first step is what, and I think what is what you want. Something that I learned about 5 or 6 years ago, I was sitting at a conference and the guy got up and he's like, you know what? It's okay to want what we want. And that's something that it's hard for me I struggle with that sometimes. I think that if I want something, just the simple fact that I want something, it makes me selfish. And I'm such the opposite of that person that for me to actually say, I want this, I feel like I'm my 5-year-old, Sure. And my 5-year-old, Dad, can I play with your phone? Dad, can I play? No. Dad, can I play with your phone? No. Dad, can I said no 4 times. Like, stop. So like I feel like that 5-year-old in any realm of my life sometimes when I say this is what I want. But for as long as it's something that's a good thing to have, as long as it's not something that you're taking away from a future joy that you should wait to have, or as long as you're not outside of marriage, chasing a woman you shouldn't be chasing, like there are things that you can want that are wrong to want. And I think financial freedom is a good thing to want as long as there's that purpose behind it. But I think the first thing is what, and you have to figure out what that is. And that's, to me, it's kind of starts with your budget. Like, so go through a yearly budget of yours. I'm talking life insurance, car insurance, groceries, home supplies, even repairs for your house. What about clothes? What about if you have credit card debt, you want to put that in there for now, but maybe later you can get all that stuff paid off, and maybe that won't be the case at some point. But what is your financial freedom number? For most people, like we said last week, it's going to be somewhere between like $80,000 a year and $160,000 a year. That's really what it is. $8,000 to $16,000 a month is kind of what I'm hearing. I mean, I've heard as much as 20, but I think most people could realistically live on a lot less. So I mean, and I've even heard as low as $6,000 a month. I mean, I think definitely I've seen people live on less than $6,000. I've seen people live on $3,000 a month. So that and I think the lower you can make that number, the easier it is to attain. Of
course.
That all has to kind of go into the thought process when you're creating your what. Now, I just think your what is very important. Your what is like where you're going. That's your goal. Like the shortest distance between 2 points is what? A straight line, right? But if you don't know what those 2 points are,
right,
what are you doing?
Sure.
Like you're going to be like doing this and you have no idea where you're going because you don't know what. And that's why I think that point of where you want to go, what you want, is the most important piece to have, and that's the first step.
Now, so kind of going in that, we talked about someone not having a plan. What if a person doesn't know their what? Like, so they're putting this together. So the way you map it out is you start going through your yearly budget. It sounds like it's possible that if you don't know what that is, maybe by going through what you spend here, you'll find out what is important to you.
That's what I'm trying to say. It's almost a process to get to what, because you've got to go through that. Like, you got to know what is your real spend rate? What do you really spend every single month and every single year? We think sometimes we spend a whole lot less than we do. And then when we actually track it every single month for a month, you're like, oh crap, I spent $60 this week on Starbucks. Maybe I shouldn't do that. Or you know what I mean? We went to the grocery store and then we went to Target and then we went to Sam's Club or we went to Costco. It's like, you think you're spending $200 a week on groceries and you find out you're really spending $300 or $400 a week on groceries.
So just to take a look at this. So it's not a matter of just the what as in, well, what do I want? It's let's go back and find out the way I'm living shows me my what, and maybe at that point you can kind of recalibrate, find out what is important, and you can change it. But
well, and in addition to that, if you're not doing something currently now that you want, again, it kind of goes back to what it is that I want. Like for me, when I did my original plan, me and my family we were going on one vacation a year and maybe like one weekend trip a year, and I said I'd like to go on 2. So what I was currently, I actually upped that, and I said, no, this is what I want.
Interesting.
And for me, I think vacations is an investment in your family. I think it's one of the best investments you can do in your so I don't feel like that's a selfish thing at all, although it is fun to do. Sure. But I think that you need those time, especially when the kids are younger. So, but for me, like I actually upped parts of my budget. Like Christmas time, I love spending money at Christmas time on family and friends and and different people that I know,
co-worker
and co-hosts of the Active Turnkey
I love
podcast
Christmas too, guys.
So Jared loves Christmas in July or August or any month of the year. So anyways, figuring out what it is the first step. And normally if you don't take the first step, you don't take the second step, right?
Sure.
So you've got to take that, figure out where's that goal. And then the next thing is...
Well, before you go farther,
sure.
So I'm definitely interested in what's next. But how many investors, in your experience, have a plan?
Very few. So they think they have a plan. They kind of they run through some numbers. They've heard I need a number. A number is kind of a big thing out there.
And they go by what, doors maybe?
Number is kind of cash flow. Like I need this much
okay.
cash flow per month. But they don't. I think a lot of people don't even really know what they need or don't know what that even looks like. And I think it's an important data point.
Or do they say the number because they hear the number?
Or that, yes. Okay. Or they think, well, this is how much I make per year right now, so this is what I need.
Gotcha.
So and I think you guys should be doing that anyways. Whether or not you're going to have a financial freedom plan or not, you ought to, I should do it way more often than I do. Like, I was even just telling my wife, we really need to go back and redo our budget.
So how often should you, if you had a recommendation?
I mean, I know people that say you should do a budget every month. I mean, you should do a new budget every month and make sure.
Those people are crazy.
I know. I mean, that is way out there. Wow. But I mean, Dave Ramsey has pretty much made a living off of telling people they should do it every single month. So, I mean, I believe if you're going to do a yearly budget, you should probably do it at least once a year, right? I mean, so maybe at least once a year you ought to kind of reset a new budget. And I mean, really, if you want to be technical, like even in business, we try to check our budgets every month and where are we on track or off track to hit these numbers. I think those are all good ways to be able to get better and maybe spend less money or, if you're not tracking it, if you're not focused on it, sometimes it just goes out the window and you don't know. So we lose a lot of money. A lot of money's coming out of our bucket, so to speak, because it's just being thrown out the window. We don't pay attention to it as much.
And we don't know where it's going.
You got it. So
that's the what.
The what. Next? So first thing is the what, which is like that's the B line, like number B, A to B. How do I get from A to B? Well, B is your goal. B is that little point out there where you're going to have financial freedom. You're going to have enough money coming in passive income where you don't have to work necessarily. You may want to, but you're having enough of that. Maybe it's $10,000 a month for you or $8,000 a month for you or whatever that number is. But you have that coming in automatically every single month. And that's what I think financial freedom is. We talked about that last week. But the second step is sometimes even harder to do than the first step. Okay? So going through, and this kind of all works together because as you do that budget, you also need to figure out where you are today. So where are you on that financial freedom plan? How much money am I spending? What debt do I have that I need to get rid of? And maybe like we've already talked, maybe things I need. Maybe I need to take a cut back on spending on certain items so that way I can pay off debt and I can now. Maybe my financial freedom number is $12,000 a month right now, but if I paid off a bunch of debt, maybe it would only be $8,000 a month. So taking a step back and figuring out where am I at now. Sometimes is hard because we have to be honest with ourselves. Isn't that kind of hard sometimes? Sure. Whether it's spiritually, whether it's like emotionally, whether it's financially, just having the hard truth about where you're at today. And a lot of times we get sidetracked and we get messed up because we're not honest about where we're really at. We think we're here, right? So we got a button here and we're drawing a line from here to here. But if we don't realize we're actually here and we got to get all the way there, we don't draw the right plan for ourselves, right? So I think with that is how much money am I spending? What debt can I get rid of? What debt am I in and what can I get rid of? Am I giving 10% of my income? And I believe that if you're not doing that, I don't believe you're going to be blessed. And I think the people that are givers in this world have been proven over and over and over again. There's never been an example that I've seen of somebody that's been a really big giver that didn't come back to them. So I believe you reap what you sow, and if you're not doing that, I believe that there's probably things coming in your life that are unfortunate and they wouldn't be coming in your life if you were giving. And to me, I believe the tithe is God. So that's the first thing that comes out for me. And if I'm not doing that, nothing's right with me. Sure. But I'm always trying to figure out how can I raise that standard of giving, which is kind of why I have good success and work to have to give and all the stuff that we talk about in good success as well. But so figuring out where you're at now, how much am I in debt? What is my monthly outgo? And what things do I need to take care of in order to get to that financial freedom? What are all those barriers? Okay, so that's the second step. So like I said, there's private process in both of these, right? Mm-hmm. The third one sometimes is even harder. So, the first two are kind of hard, but, for me, sometimes this is more along the lines of time. You have to give yourself time. You have to think about it. There's a lot of self-reflection when it comes to this.
I was literally just about to ask you, this does not sound like you can get this done in an evening.
No, I probably would recommend that. So I know, although, see, it's just 5 lines, Jared. So if you read the book,
simple.
like this is, if you read the book, I'm
that
giving,
plan's a lot easier than what
this
you're
seems like
about.
a pretty easy plan, right? So the first step is what, the second step is where, the third step, and I know that there's books out there, and I believe in this, start with why,
sure.
But I think in this realm, I think why comes third.
Okay.
So like what I want, that's drawing, and so now I've drawn my line. I figured out where I'm at now, where I want to go, and now I can start thinking like there's the space in between. Mm-hmm. But what I've learned over the years is if your why isn't big enough, like that what's just not going to take care of itself. Mm-hmm. Like the why has to be big enough. Why do you really want that?
Sure.
And you can't answer the question why until you know what it is that you're trying to go after, right? So it's like if we create a goal, we have no idea why we created this goal. What's going to keep you from quitting in the middle? Like nothing. That is what's going to keep you going. So the reason why I wake up, and it's funny because like sometimes I go home and I tell my wife, why do I do all that I do? Why do I have 6 or 7 companies? Why do I have all these houses? Why do I have all these employees? Why do I do all this? And like the answer always comes back to me. The answer is because this is why I was placed on this earth. So, and that's the same thing for financial freedom. So whether that's to spend more time with your kids, whether that's to spend more time in ministry, whether that's to be able to give more to, that's why you believe you were here on earth. Talked to a lady yesterday. She wants to be able to provide multi-generational, income for not just her own family. She's totally taken care of in real estate. But what she's trying to do is she's trying to be able to take care of her kids, and her kids work in her business with her. So now, she's got 80 or 90 properties. So they got to figure out, well, what does that look like? What does that plan look like to be able to have enough to not just have for me, but to be able to have, and then, the kids are part of this as well, and they can be a part of this, thing too. So why you do what you do, I've even heard people one of their big, just to kind of do a bucket list of these are the things I'm going to do once I get financial freedom, and kind of keeping your eyes on those things. Those are all good things to do. One of Dave Ramsey's guys says he's going to take his wife on this trip to Europe or whatever. It's his dream to take his wife to, and that's just part of the reason. I don't think that's a good enough reason to get financial freedom, but I think it's a really good thing. You got to put those thoughts in your head of this is why I'm going to do this. I'm not just going to do this because most people are not going to do this to sit on a beach in Mexico. I'm sorry, we've been sold a pack of lies when it comes to retirement over the last 30, 40 years. We go to school, we go to college, we get a job, we retire, Social Security pays for everything, right? Wrong. But, and then we sit on a beach and, just have fun the rest of it. That's just not reality. Nobody wants to live that way. And we've also learned that if you do that, you die sooner, and nobody really wants to die sooner either for the most part. So you have to have a purpose more and kind of have more of a reason why. It's going to be bigger than you. So creating that why that's bigger than you, I think is much more important. Why were you really placed on this earth? What is your ultimate gifts and talents that if you just spent your whole time doing you'd be able to make a much greater impact on today's, on the future, on the next 200 years, and maybe on eternity is kind of like this. That's where my mind goes. So I'm trying to figure out why every single day. And like I said, I created this my personal financial freedom plan 7-8 years ago, and this is the steps that I went through. I kind of wrote down, this is what I want to do. This is where I'm at now. This is why I'm going to do it. And then the next step. Are we ready for the next step, Jared?
Let's do it.
Okay. Then is the plan.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay, so a lot of times people just they just want to get into the plan right away, but there's pre-work. It's prep work. It's like college prep, Wow. You don't just go to college and have your education. You got to do a lot of prep work. It's kind of like, so when I was a lot younger, I was a painter. All right. So when you paint a room, you realize that it takes you more time to prep the room than it actually does to paint the room if you prep properly.
Sure.
Or you can not do any prep at all.
Yes.
And then just do it. And then you make a mess of everything. Sure. And then you're going back and fixing it and it takes way longer. Sure. So it's going to be the exact same way in this instance. If you just start creating a plan, and it might be a great plan, but if you don't do the prep work before the plan, if you don't figure out where you want to go or what you want, where you're at now, why you want it, that plan's not going to work out. It's not going to happen. So the next step at this point is the plan. I mean, for me, and I've said this many different times, many different podcasts, many different people, spoken in a lot of different places. For me, my plan is pretty much rentals, lending, and business. I don't feel like most people don't need 20 different items. You don't need a mutual fund of 1,000 different companies. You just need a couple different things, and then you got to figure out, okay, well, if it's all rentals, how many doors do I need to get to? I mean, now you're chunking it down. It's well, if it's rentals, it's this. If it's lending, so for instance, if you're going to lend, I mean, if you can live on $100,000 a year, you need, and if you can get 10, you got to figure out what you can get. Can I get 8%? Do I know people that will pay me 6%, 10%? If you can get 10% on $1 million, $100,000 a year, $100,000 a year is what you're going to make off of $1 million. It's very simple math.
Sure.
So if I'm going to do 100% lending, well, it's $1 million if my number is $100,000 a year. It's really simple. But if you take the traditional advice, and they think you might need $100,000 a year, they're going to be focusing on 2, 3, 4% in the stock market, and you might end up needing $4 or $5 million, and that's just unrealistic for most people to think about. I'm not saying that nobody can get there, because you definitely can, but I'm just saying it's a lot harder to get to $4 or $5 million than it is to get to $1 million.
Of course.
Most of us are going to make $1 million in our lifetime, whether we think it or not. We just don't realize that 50,000 times 20 years, and most of us are going to work 40, 50 years.
Sure.
Is it really does get us there. So that's the next step, is the plan, and it's kind of chunk it out. Maybe it's 10% of my, I'm going to do 10% in here. Maybe it is bonds. Maybe you want to keep some money in your stock market. That's totally fine. I'm not trying to say everybody should put all their money in real estate. What I am saying is that real estate should be part of the plan. And there was a statistic I saw at a single family office convention. I believe it's something like 80% of the world's super wealthy has at least 40% plus of their wealth holdings in real estate. I mean, it's a massive amount of numbers. So even if it's not, a 50, 60, 70, 80%, which I don't think everybody should have, although I think some people should. I know some people have been completely 100% financially free on just owning rentals. I think you ought to have a portion of that ought to be done in either single family and multifamily and duplexes or whatever the case is. Some of it ought to be held in real estate. And we've talked about benefits. We'll continue to talk about benefits and why I believe that is. But there's many reasons for it. So creating that plan, whether it's stock market holding, whether it's holding private companies, private entities, whether it's bonds, maybe it's life insurance. I mean, even whole life, overfunded life insurance, I think is something that a lot of people should be considering. I'm not saying it's for everybody, but I think it is a plan that people use. Lending, notes. I know you can buy notes and you can, make money that way as well. There's lots of different ways you can invest in companies. I was actually offered a deal yesterday from a guy who's willing to pay 15% for gymnasiums for a gym. He owns 3 world gyms in the local area, and he's looking for money at 15%. And he's like, I'm like, do you want debt or equity? He's like, well, it could be convertible. And I'm just thinking to myself, that could be, if that's what you're looking for, if you want to own pieces of people's businesses, that's another way to do it. You have the shows like Shark Tank or the shows like Profit. That's what they do. They go in and buy businesses or they buy portions of businesses, and they use that as part of their financial freedom plan. So but just don't do things unless you know a little bit about it, unless you know enough, or unless you know somebody and you're connected to somebody that you trust. And so all this is about trust. So that's the second to last part of this is how. And that's the plan.
Go through the 4 again.
So the first step is what. What do you want? The second, so it's what, where. So where am I at now? Why? And then how. How is that plan? So creating that plan, knowing how many rentals I need, how many loans I need, at what percent, maybe what companies, like just go through that plan and say, these are my goals. Like you're creating your goals. You've created your goal up here of what you need for passive income. Well, now create your goal for what you need to do. Like that's going to be like the next steps. And then from there, what I would do is I would chunk that down. So let's just say you have a plan to be financial free in 7 years. Okay, and let's just use the number. Let's just use an easy number for me to think about. Let's just say it's 7 years. It's $70,000 in 70 years per year. Well, if you do that in equal chunks every year, what is that? $10,000 a year. So after year 1, you can ask yourself, did I bring in $7,000 or $10,000 in passive income this year? It's very easy to track that way, Sure. So that's what I did. Like create a round number so that way and if your number comes up to 68,600, let's make it 70,000, round it up, make it round.
Sure.
And then you can create like a yearly budget. So like if it's a 7-year goal or 5-year goal, whatever it is, maybe it's a 10-year goal. I don't care. Maybe it's a 10-year goal and you're like, every year I'm going to add $10,000 in passive income. So maybe that's just one rental. Maybe you buy one rental for, let's say, $130,000, $140,000, and you think that you're going to make $1,000 a month on that after you've paid for, maybe it's cash and it's not leverage,
right?
And you're gonna pay $130,000 for a house that's renting for $1,400 maybe, or $1,375, and you think when all the dust settles from the property management company and the taxes and insurance and maintenance or whatever, you're going to end up with about $1,000 a month. Okay, well that's $12,000. So it's possible that in that 1 year, then you just got yourself 10% of the way to your financial freedom goal. You know what I mean? So it's not just about setting up the plan; it's also about setting up mechanisms in which you can track it throughout until you get there. And then kind of for me, I revisited this every year, and I looked at my tax return. I looked at all my financial statements at the end of the year, and I said, where am I at? And I think that's to me that's the best way. That's the only way I know how, because that's the way I did it. I really wasn't taught like all these little innuendos, all these little things. This is what I did. I learned about financial freedom one day on my plane ride home. I created my budget, my yearly budget. I went going through everything, and then I had to go home and I had to I talked to my wife. Where are we at with some of these things? How much debt do we have? What do we need to get rid of? How do we need to change our lifestyle temporarily to kind of like fit with this new goal that we want to go to? And we kind of talked about why we wanted to do it. That's part of the reason where I kind of got excited more about flipping Gary, because I kind of felt like this was a period of time in which I had already had the dream, but I hadn't really told anybody about it. It let me express it because I felt like there was a hope, there was chance that I was going to actually be able to do it at some point. I thought maybe 20, 30 years down the road, but now I'm actually thinking this is a real life thing. If I become financially free, oh man, this opens up a whole new world for me to be able to do my purpose in life. So how you get there is the second to last step. Well, there is some extra kind of steps after here, but I think once you figure out how you're going to get there, I think part of the how is when. And I think that has to be part. You got to give yourself a deadline. It's just like an employee or a contractor, right? Like if you need something and you don't give them a deadline, like you're never going to get it. It's never going to happen. So you got to do the same thing to yourself. You got to hold yourself accountable to a deadline. When am I going to get this by? And then and then I even add, there's something that's not really in the book, I don't believe. Maybe I actually added it to when, believe it or not. I'm not 100% sure about this, but in my psychology, the way I think, a little crazy, I know. But to me, the next part after when is now. So like if you just go through these different steps, what, where, why, how, when, and now. So if you don't take action right now, like you're probably, again, like you're just pushing it off again. Absolutely. So what am I going to do right now? What is my first step? And, like giving myself like a very quick to do and deadline. I got to get this done right now. Is the final wrap up of this process. So it's you want to read it here? So it's what, where, why, how, when, and now. What am I going to act on right now? Because action, action changes things. And if you don't take action right now, right away, after you've created what you want, where you are now, why you want it, how you're going to get there, when you're going to get there by, if you don't take action, then the whole plan doesn't matter, right?
Absolutely.
I know people who have financial freedom plans that have gone through this and they didn't act. They just didn't they went through this whole thing. They did all this work, but they didn't act. And that's probably the most important part, is to take action. Call Jared this week. No, just kidding. But call whoever it is. I mean, obviously we're here and we sell active turnkeys. We sell turnkeys. We build rental portfolios for investors, and we want to be able to be a help to you guys as for that. But like whoever it is that you're working with, whoever you're loaning money to, whoever, if the money's just sitting in the account, if you're not doing anything with it, like it's just collecting dust. It's being a conduit. I mean, it's being a bucket. Your money's just sitting there. It's just collecting dust. You can't take it with you. So put it to use, make it happen. And I just think that everybody out there, if you will take on these steps, if you'll figure out what you want and be honest with yourself, if you'll figure out where you're at now and be honest with yourself, if you'll figure out why you want to get there, and make statements, like write statements down, write like forceful statements to yourself, and then post those in places in your house. But why you want to get there. I forgot what's after why. Why now? I got to keep looking at my own notes. How you're going to get there? Sorry. Yes, the plan. Figure out the plan. When you're going to get there. Like give yourself a deadline, and then what are you going to do right now? Like take action now, and that's what's going to get you to financial freedom.
Well, obviously this is jam-packed full of information, guys. If you, first of all, I highly recommend you get the book. It's right there, Active Turnkey. Written by Tom. He kind of went with you step by step, but I mean, obviously he's going to go in more detail in the book. But in future podcasts, one thing we like to talk about is kind of talking about that. You may have the plan, but you could get stagnant and not having somebody that you can talk to try to help, or maybe certain things that are holding you back, maybe overanalyzation or waiting for the perfect situation, all those different types of things, like you said, not acting. Doesn't mean jumping in just willy-nilly, right? Just buying any deal you see, but what are some next steps? So in a couple of podcasts, we're going to talk about vetting a turnkey or different types of things like that. So we'll get into that for sure. So, but if you're looking for that, activeturnkey.com, is that where they find it?
goodsuccess.com? I think it's atkbook.com is one place you can find it. You can find it on Amazon too, so you can definitely go there if you'd prefer that route. I think it's actually cheaper if you go to atk.com, atkbook.com, but you can find it either place.
Well, as Tom said, we do build rental portfolios for investors. So if you're interested in investing, we highly recommend the Northwest Indiana area. And we're definitely opening the door to Gary, which has been pretty exciting for us. So we'd love to have a part of that.
Yeah, let me ask this one question, Jared, because I know we're going to be wrapping up here quick. But like, how would it make you feel to be financially free today? Like,
you asking
just
me or
think
you
about
asking
that. No, the people out there, the audience that are listening and watching us right now on Facebook or wherever else this is posted, YouTube. How would that make you feel to be financially free now, to have as much passive income right now that you would be able to, live without having to work or without whatever the case is? It gives you the freedom to be able to do whatever it is that you believe that you are built for or that you were created for. How would that make you feel? I'd love to leave you guys with that thought today.
It's a great question. Even that should just get you provoked to look more deeply into that before you even start any of that stuff. How'd that make you feel? And I think that's a great question. I might think about that myself.
I'm telling you, for me, that was exciting. It was an exciting day when I had that thought, and I just said, you know what, I'm just gonna change my life, and it has.
Awesome. Well, if you are looking for turnkey properties and you'd like some information on that, you can reach me at jared@buyolsongroup.com, and or you can
visit our website at buyolsongroup.com.
That's right. Awesome. So remember, we build rental portfolios for investors.
Yes.
So, ATK,
the best way to buy rentals.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one. Olson Group Network makes no warranty, guarantee, or representation as to the accuracy or sufficiency of the information featured in this podcast. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. This podcast should not be considered professional advice. Unless specifically stated otherwise, Olson Group Network does not endorse, approve, recommend, or certify any information, product, process, service, or organization presented or mentioned in this podcast, and information from this podcast should not be referenced in any way to imply such approval or endorsement. Any third-party materials or content of any third-party site referenced in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the opinions, standards, or policies of Olson Group Network. Olson Group Network assumes no responsibility or liability for the accuracy or completeness of the content contained in third-party materials or on third-party sites referenced in this podcast or the compliance with the applicable laws of such materials and or links referenced herein.